Hi there, my name is Adrian. I'm the founder of JavaScript Mastery. I created the JSM Masterclass experience to help web developers launch and fast track their careers. We do this with real world team project building with modern tech stacks, personalized mentor help from experienced developers, and hiring support. This is an interview with Ahsan, a Masterclass student. Welcome, Ahsan.
Yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So let's start off with what you're doing right now. What's your position in the company that you're just starting?
So I got recently hired as a web developer for the company that I'm working for called Growth Boss.
That's great. If I'm not mistaken, you did say it was a lead web developer position.
Yes, it's a lead web developer position.
That's wonderful. You joined the masterclass about 6 months ago, right?
Oh yeah, it has been 6 months.
Yeah. And what were you doing then?
Then I was just studying and making projects on my own, and I was bouncing between different boot camps and completing them and going through them.
Okay, it was some Web3 boot camps, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's cool. I'm guessing kind of. Or before, let me ask you, how did your web development journey start?
2019 is when I like really got serious about it. Searched on Udemy for some courses for web development. I did that, and then I got a lot more interested in the web and how it works.
Yep.
And so at some point, I was learning by myself. I remember it was I was like really disciplined. I was waking up every day, spending like 3 hours just going through the course.
Okay.
I heard from a friend about a boot camp that I could do. It was a 6 month intensive boot camp. I'm free. I have the money. I can do it. I jumped into it, and those were some really long 6 months, really long.
That
But
that
I
was the
learned,
first one, right?
yeah, that was the first one, and I learned so much from that boot camp, and like just having the programmer's mindset and the sort of values that they instilled in me. I carry that with me when I graduated and from that boot camp, and I
Being the
started.
first one, it was tough, I'm guessing, right?
Oh yeah. The first one's always tough. You're getting used to the pace because they really bring all that content towards you at like a neck breaking speed.
Yeah.
So like for me, it became like, how do I consume all of this?
Yeah. While creating the curriculum for the JSM Masterclass experience, I interviewed 50 plus graduates from different boot camps, trying to figure out what were the best things and what were the worst things. And they all told me a thing similar to what you've told me right now, and that is that you learn a lot, you get just a lot of content in those 6 months, but sometimes it's so hard to take it all in, and to after you learn it, you might think, okay, I know it, but then it all just goes away after a couple of months because you cannot learn at those speeds so much content, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The boot camp, however, did a really good job by making it practical. It's just there was like very, very minimal amounts of theory, unless like we had to understand how like the internet worked or some underlying technology. We would go through the docs, um, but other than that, yeah, like it was so fast. It was so fast that we had to take time on our own to go through and learn it. And sometimes I remember they would give projects. They would always give projects to do to complete by a specific time frame, and completing the projects was definitely possible because we had good help from the mentors, um, and we did learn a lot, but there was a lot to consume there too. So I had to take notes. I had
Yeah.
to maybe even sometimes go back and redo the whole project to get it through my head.
So you completed that boot camp, but then what made you think that you want to join the JSM Masterclass experience as well? Was there a missing point of that practicality of being able to approach different projects, or was it something else?
The first reason, and it's the most important reason, was that I wanted to broaden my network of developers.
Yep.
Because just before I joined, I was working as a full stack developer, and in the company that I was working for, there was very minimal mentorship for juniors.
Yep.
There wasn't like code review. It was expected that you would be learning on your own to catch up to just the work that was being done. And for me, like having exited a boot camp and then being, working and being um, shown like a new technology. So I was working with a different technology in the boot camp, and then when I started working, it was like React, and I was like, I never used React before because the boot camp it used more older technologies that were more in demand in the market around me. So I'm exposed to React, and I'm like, I don't know how to properly navigate through React. And I tried my best to go through like the docs and to make projects on the side. And um, I did get a little bit of help, but it wasn't enough for me to say that like I'm I'm comfortable with React and I'm comfortable doing the work that's being tasked of me now.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
so from there, I was like, okay, well, I do need mentorship, and I need someone to mentor me in a more long term. Um, and I realized this a bit, like I did realize this at the time after I left my job as a full stack developer. But my my attention got drawn towards a shiny object called Web3,
Yep.
and I was just so immersed in it. And then when I came out of that, like that sort of immersion of like information from Web3, I was like, oh, okay, well, one core aspect of being a Web3 developer, so if I wanted to be a full stack Web3 developer, was that I would still need to get good at React. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and I was like, okay, well, I've gone through these Web3 boot camps, and I was browsing through. I knew about the JSM Mastery YouTube channel
Yep.
for like a really long time, because I would just look through tutorials, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll just do tutorial.
Yeah. That's
And
phenomenal.
then I was introduced to the masterclass through there, and I was like, oh well, this can really help me learn React and build projects that are very cool.
So having done that 6-month boot camp and having done those other Web3 specialized boot camps, you came to the conclusion that I teach to all of the students in the masterclass. And that is that Web3 is a fantastic technology, but still, you need to be able to develop regular applications
Yeah,
to which then you can integrate Web3 functionalities. You can think of Web3 just as a database, as a server side, as a backend, but you still need to be able to develop and turn it into a full stack application. So
absolutely.
I'm really glad you got those skills in the masterclass. So having done those boot camps, having even worked as a developer before, with the masterclass, you got a chance to dive into real React projects and modern projects. So, what do you think of the projects you've built throughout the masterclass?
So the first project that I built, I was in a team with one other person,
Yep,
Joseph, and me and him, we worked towards creating the music application.
yep,
Um, this application was fun to build. It was, and I remember because it was just us two at the time, and our group was very small. It was a lot of work to do. However, like I enjoyed building out the application and thinking about the process that goes into designing, which uh, was mostly left to Joseph. However, he did ask me like some of my inputs like on certain designs, and the whole process of constructing like the logic and directing the logic with the music player that I was tasked to was really fun, because I got to dive deep into Redux and use that to build out the application. And at the end, it turned out pretty good.
yeah. I'm really glad that you mentioned that there were the two of you in the masterclass. The teams usually range from 2 to 4. We keep them really small. Having more members or having less members, both sides have their advantages and disadvantages. Specifically, with having less members, it allows you to immerse yourself deeper into the entire project and implement more functionalities. So I'm sure that was a great learning experience for you. And at the end of the day, the application turned out great. So, what do you think of the mentors in the masterclass?
So the mentors that I had um, at the time were Mateo,
Yeah,
and then for code reviews, it was Sujata.
that's correct.
Uh,
Yeah,
if when I recall like our periods with Mateo, he was incredibly helpful. I remember that whenever we would meet to discuss about where we are currently at and what we're stuck on, he would provide me with just enough information for me to figure it out on my own,
yep,
but just also not too much that he gives me the entire answer. And I really like that, because it's not hand holding, but it's also like you're leaving crumbs for me to like get to the to solving the problem.
correct. Yes, and then
So
Sujata as well. Sujata is amazing, right? With the
Sujata is
PRs.
amazing. One thing was that like she was really kind. I remember getting on call with her, and she was helping me out with a CSS problem on the third project that we were doing, and she was just incredibly helpful with it, and also explaining in great detail why it might be that I was having my issue. One thing I would say is that she was just one person at the time, so because she was tasked with code reviews, it was a lot like it was difficult for probably her to get the code reviews done really quickly,
Yep.
considering it was a lot of people and a lot of code to go through. So one thing I would say is that having my code reviews, like waiting on that, and seeing that it came after was like a bit unfortunate. However, like it made up for it afterwards when she went through it, and she was able to tell me what was the issue and what wasn't. And um, beyond that, Sujata and Mateo were both really great mentors.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, we did work a lot on increasing the number of mentors, or even increasing the time or decreasing the time required for each PR. So we did manage to get it in a couple of hours now from the opening. So thank you for your feedback. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I was like what, second cohort,
Yep. Yep.
so it was still very small things that were happening. And
Yes. Yes.
I've seen on Discord that you have hired more mentors.
Yes.
That's
That's
really good.
that's correct. Thank you. Thank you so much. And um, how would you say that the masterclass prepared you for the role that you have now?
If we're talking about my role right now,
Yep.
it involves just talking to clients, and getting well, they would give us like a form or a specification of how they want their website to be built, and then I would read through it and build out their website for them based off of some research. So if I was to compare like how it helped me, I could say that some of the ways that information was presented to me in the masterclass did translate over.
Yep.
Specifically, when you would give us like the project specifications and like the design choices, and just like more details about like what technologies we can use to build out the project. Um, that really did help because, of course, you did most of the work getting the information organized. But I was just thinking about the process and how you went about getting that together. And that does translate over to my work because I have to do the research to show the client, like, hey, what are the website, what are the pieces of this website that you like from, and these websites are from the competitors.
Yep.
And so like they would give us their feedback and fill out a form and send that to us, and then from there we would work with the information they provide.
So in general, kind of helping you approach and set up the project requirements and technologies needed for a specific project.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
project architecture, essentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
that's wonderful. That's great. And just we can slowly wrap this up. I hope people found value in this. Is there anything you want to say to anyone watching this who's maybe considering joining the masterclass or just wants to improve their career?
I would say if you're considering joining the masterclass for any of the two reasons you just mentioned, go for it.
Yep.
Particularly because like if you put yourself in a position where you have to make an interesting project, and a very important component of completing projects is just being interested and caring about the end,
Yep.
and the process to get to the end. Then go for it. You will see that it will help you, perhaps in an area that you didn't think about before or didn't put much thought in. So if like I know if you're like a back end developer, you might improve by looking at how you can implement the front end. And if you're a front end, you can improve by looking at how you can implement back end.
Yep.
Or you can play to your strengths. That's definitely possible. You will be in a team setting. So I would say just go for it. Go for it if you're really interested in moving forward and perhaps even deepening your experience with React.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for coming on. So, for everybody watching, if you want to join the next cohort, Master in Modern Web Development, and get hired ASAP, click on the link in the description to apply. We'll let you know if you're a good fit. Once again, Ahsan, thank you so much for joining. And it was great having you in the masterclass as well as on this interview.
Yeah, it was great being here, Adrian. Thanks again for everything.
Phenomenal.